So welcome to our good friend, Venerable Kartson, or Yaki Platt, as I know him. Uh, Yaki and I have known each other for a long time, around about 16 years. We met in Dharamsala in India a very long time ago when he was studying Tibetan there, and I was also living there. So since then, we've remained in touch. And he lives down the road at Chenrezig on the Sunshine Coast now as a resident translator. And I also live on the Sunshine Coast. So quite often we catch up and have coffee and have a chin wag. But mostly we work together doing pilgrimages, which is one of my all-time things that I really like to do. So for those who don't know Venerable Kartson, he is a Buddhist monk, a scholar, a translator, and he also speaks 3 languages and probably a whole lot more, which we don't know about. But anyhow, he's a very talented person. He also loves to travel. So, and one of the things he's been able to do over many years is travel for his job. Translating for High Lamas. And so he's been able to combine his work and his love of travel. So we're just going to kind of have a little bit of a chat today about what brought you to travel.
All right. So I guess that I started traveling in my mind. I think already in my teenage years, I was quite an avid reader, and I read books written by different writers from all across the world, and historical accounts of fiction or what have you. And I always wanted to go and see places, even though now in hindsight, I think that probably some of them can't really suit or don't really suit my personal disposition. Like, for example, just to give you an example, kind of had this dream about working on a fishing boat somewhere in Alaska. Well,
Wow.
I don't like fish. I don't like fish.
I know that.
Yeah, I like fish. I don't like killing fish, but still, I had those dreams for many years, and then during my mid-20s, I started traveling, and I started traveling by myself because to begin with, I haven't found someone that suited my disposition in traveling. So I thought I'd just going to go for it by myself. And then I think that at the beginning it was a little bit hard learning how to be by yourself in a new place, but it opened the door for just getting to be more forthcoming, or being able to communicate with people, not only fellow travelers, but also with people from different cultures around the world. And as much as possible, try to be open to them, to open up to them, to learn about the way that they think, the way that they see the world. And I think that has evolved to be one of my passions. I think that one of my passions, in the sense that this is why I like traveling, meeting people, learning new things, new cultures, new ideas, new ways of thinking. So that's what motivated me. I think that the first backpacking trip that I did was to Europe in my early 20s. Then I went to Central and South America. And then I was so inspired by South and Central America. I was speaking, I learned Spanish, and I was quite fluent in Spanish. And after going back to Israel, I grew up in Israel. A year or 1.5 years later, I had 4 weeks holidays, and I went to my travel agent. It was at a time where people didn't use the internet to buy flight tickets. So I went to my travel agent and said, look, I have 4 weeks. I want to go to Colombia. So he looked for flight tickets, and he said, well, Colombia is just the flight ticket was $1,600, and that was probably 25 years ago. So wow. I thought myself, that's quite expensive for just 4 weeks. And he looked at me and said, well, India is half the price.
Oh, right.
So I thought, okay, let's go to India. So I knew nothing about India. I didn't know what Buddhism was, what Hinduism was. To me, it looked like all pretty much the same, all the same things under the same umbrella of India. So I went to India. I went first of all to Ladakh. Everything was pretty amazing and beautiful. Still, I knew nothing. I was pretty ignorant. Then I was chasing a girl, so I ended up going with her to Dharamsala, to McLeodganj. And one day as I was hiking up the mountains, I met a couple of monks who invited me into their small meditation hut. And again, I knew nothing about Buddhism at the time, but they were so kind and genuine, and so it was just a magical moment. Think about meeting those Buddhist monks in the forest, a little bit of fog in the forest, and prayer flags, and everything was so exotic. So, I was so impressed, and when I went back to my guest house, I found myself, I just need to know more about Buddhism. So I bought a couple of books, and I was reading them as I was traveling, and many of the ideas and the philosophies and the points that I read through resonated with me. So I just wanted to know more. It's not that I had this revelation, but I was interested enough to just taking in my own stride and learn more. And I don't know, 25 years after that, look at me, I'm a Buddhist monk.
So here you are 25 years later. You've done, we've done pilgrimages, as I mentioned, to India. I think the first one was back in 2010, 2012, and then kind of. So, of course, India is amazing to go on pilgrimages too. So can you just tell us what the significance of going on a pilgrimage?
I think that, when I go on a pilgrimage, I go to a pilgrimage as a Buddhist person. Now I'm a monk, so I'm going on a pilgrimage to as a Buddhist monk. And to begin with, it's really inspiring to me to go to the places where the Buddha has lived and was active, taught, communicated with the people around. So that's one thing. Of course, I think that in a general way, we say that those places contain special blessings of the Buddha and the teachings that the Buddha gave, and the many meditators and realized beings that have lived and operated in those areas for centuries. So that's one thing. But I think that also, for me on a practical level, the type of Buddhism that I belong to is Tibetan Buddhism. So when you look at depictions of the Buddha and of the Indian masters, they always seem to be more of an Chinese Tibetan kind of feature. And you almost forget that this whole Buddhist scene evolved in India and was there for many centuries, for 1,500 years. So you go to India and then you look at those, first of all, very amazing Buddhist monument, and then surrounded by Indian people and local people around that. And then you get a new perspective about Buddhism. Now, the Buddha was active in India, 2,600 years ago, and he grew up and developed deep interest in spirituality and philosophy, and many of the philosophies that the Buddha communicated with are still active in India. Now, of course, they've also evolved, but many of those traditions are still very much active in India. So you go to India and you see that it's not that what we read in the text is just like philosophy, dry philosophy, or a certain historical account. Actually, it's pretty much alive, and it can really enrich then your engagement with Buddhism. Then also, I think that just going to India and coming from a developed country and going into a developing country, you can then have a fresh look about what suffering means. But also, you can also look at our background, social background, education background, social, spiritual beliefs, and so forth, and have this dialogue between, what we grow up with and what is there, and then I think that it just opens up our horizons. And then I think that, as you mentioned, I like speaking to people, communicating with people. It hasn't been like that always. The first few times that I went traveling by myself, and certainly the first time that I went to India, I wasn't that open to speaking with others. And I think that India is so complicated. It's very exciting, but it's also very complicated. Some things are hard and some things are just inspiring and wonderful. But I think that when you open up to people, people open up to you, and then you can and particularly India has this really special spirit, this special valor. So if you open up to people, they open up to you, and you can learn a lot about not only their life, but then put your life in perspective. I've got an anecdote, in the first time that I went to India, as I said, I arrived at Dharamsala, and then I heard about the Golden Temple, which is an amazing Sikh temple at the city of Amritsar. So I took a local bus, and back in the days, that was like 25 years ago, you could go on the top of buses. The buses were fully packed. So I was sitting on the roof of the bus, and Amritsar is the biggest place for the Sikh tradition. So you had many pilgrims that were traveling with me to Amritsar, and some of them were sitting with me on the roof, and they traveled to Amritsar in their traditional clothes. So some of them were, they have this big, beautiful turbans and traditional clothes, and some of them were holding tridents and massive swords. It looked like, 500 years in the past. I thought myself, where am I? Anyway, I arrived at the Golden Temple, and I was sitting and looking at this beautiful scenery. This temple is really amazing. And then this impressive Sikh person comes to me, and he had this massive sword tucked in his belt and a trident in his hand, and he said, "Ask me what you want to know. I'll tell you anything you want to know about this temple." And I thought that I thought myself, I don't even where to. I don't know where to begin even. But this is what's India in about. They're so forthcoming.
Yeah, direct.
Yeah, and they want to share with you, I think, their spiritual belief, their life, and so forth. And they want you, I think, to understand them. So I think that's one of the things that is really special about going on a pilgrimage in India.
So let's just fast forward to 2018. You and I went on a pilgrimage to Japan, which of course is kind of on the opposite end of the continuum, from a very open culture, where people interact with each other, to another culture which is quite closed in a way, but also, they have their own form of spirituality. So can you just let us know a little bit what you thought about Japan as a pilgrimage destination?
Well, I've always wanted to go to Japan to begin with. Of course, on a pilgrimage is great, but I always had this fascination with Japan. So, being a Buddhist monk and in the Tibetan tradition, most of the things that I know about Buddhism is coming from the Tibetan perspective. And sometimes it's easy to forget about the whole amazing Buddhist world that has evolved differently in different countries. And Japan is one of them. So before traveling to Japan, I did my own research. I looked at different Buddhist traditions in Japan and tried to learn as much as possible. And then going to Japan and visiting temples and speaking not only with Japanese clergy, but also with Japanese people that were practicing Buddhism and other stuff in their own way, was for me quite I think, eye-opener. First of all, it made me appreciate the Tibetan tradition and what is available to us, foreigners, but also I think Tibetans in general in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. But also it made me see how vast and extensive this tradition is, and also very adaptable. Also I think that Japanese culture is so different and so fascinating. And, in so many different ways, I was trying to get my head around different things that I've read, different things that I've heard, different things that I've seen in the movies and TV series and so forth. So for me, probably in terms of encountering a different tradition, that was the most extreme different traditions that I've seen. It's not extreme in a negative way, but so very different. And this difference is exciting.
We also, we can talk about pilgrimages for a long time, because you and I also did Australia. We went down to Victoria and went to the Great Stupa, which was a lovely 5-day trip. So we're hoping to do that next year again when we can travel. So certainly the Festival of Light was amazing, wasn't it? I really enjoyed that time being out in the Australian bush, but having all the trappings of Buddhism to go with it. So
I think that now that we're talking about it, I think that another bonus on going on a pilgrimage is the people around you, the people in your group. You're going with like-minded people. Of course, you're going in a group, so you'll find people that have different habits, different personalities, different characteristics. So of course we're different, but still there is some mutual connection, mutual interest. And I think that we traveled in Australia, for example, went to the Great Stupa. We visited also some a Vietnamese temple and some we did some other stuff. So it's an opportunity to be together and reflect, to speak about spirituality, to speak about Buddhism, but in different places. So we connect to each other, we connect to different places at different times, with different inputs. So I think that it enriches our own spirituality, but also our connection with others.
So, and unfortunately, as from next week, we were supposed to be landing in Chengdu to go for 2 weeks to Eastern Tibet. Yes, very sad. So it was going to be, it was going to be a fabulous trip, but we can't do it this year. We've certainly got a plan for next year. So can you just kind of tell us a few of the highlights?
Well, to begin with, it's, when China went into Tibet, it divided it into 5 or 6 different provinces. And the area that we are still planning to visit is now part of Sichuan. So comparing to other areas of Tibet, it enjoys a greater sense of liberty and freedom. So I think that because of that, Tibetan tradition was preserved in a better way. I think that there's a greater Tibetan spirit in those areas. So first of all, scenery is absolutely spectacular. This amazing granite rock formations and mountains, snow-capped mountains, and also forests. That's to begin with. The people are very warm, very hospitable. And this is where Geshe Jamyang, a teacher that I've worked with for 19 years, lives. And actually, I'm still in weekly connection with him. So I just spoke with him a few days ago. He's back at home in Tibet, at Kanzi. So I think that over the years, in my trips to that area, I've been to that area already 5 or 6 times. I've discovered that there's so many hidden gems. Everywhere, basically everywhere you look at, you throw a rock at this, first of all, amazing scenery, but also Tibetan tradition that is still alive and still flourishing. So I find it really exciting. And I'm really looking forward for being able to travel again to that area.
So finally, what do you think the post-COVID world of travel looks like?
Well, I think that probably when we dream of normally what we, pretty much what we used to, So I'm used to traveling to Tibet. I dream of going again to Tibet. But I mean, to be honest, it's really hard to know how things are going to fare in the next year or two. So hopefully I am hopeful that we'll get to go next year. Not only I want to go again, but I also want to see my teachers again. Geshe Jamyang in Tibet. I have a teacher in China and in Taiwan. So I really hope to be able to see them again. How things are going to work, we're still yet to see. I mean, how things are going to work in Australia, we're still yet to see. So I think that probably, maybe this is thinking out loud. I think that probably the first year, 2 or 3 of traveling would be more difficult, maybe more expensive, until new procedures, new ideas, new way of doing things are going to evolve. And then hopefully things are going to go back to a certain flow that will make things easier. I think that we'll look at how COVID-19 affects us in Australia, but now it affects the whole world by and large. So I think that one interesting thing to explore in the future is to see how it affected people in other places, not just to read reports or to look at the news, but just to have conversations with people and see that just as we are deeply affected by that, with that sense of uncertainty and personal loss in different ways, we sometimes tend to forget that other people also enjoy those hardships. And, when we can communicate with people and learn what their experience was, then first of all, we can find some mutual ground and see how actually there is something that connects all of us, but also maybe to learn from their experience and see how we can transform the way that we think about our situation. So how things are going to fare, who knows? What's going to happen in the travel world? I don't know.
But on those very wise words, thank you very much for your input. And let's hope we can all get out on, out into the world again if we don't all die of cabin fever, on this large but small island. So thanks very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and lucky you for being on that beautiful hill in Chenrezig. So thanks again.
Thank you very much. And I hope that all of us will be able to travel again sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.